The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of a weathered log cabin, and Olivia Carson felt her heart plummet straight through the floorboards as she stared at what was supposed to be her new home. She had traveled all the way from Boston, Massachusetts, to Helena, Montana Territory, in the summer of 1878, clutching a faded photograph of a distinguished gentleman named Harrison Zimmerman who had advertised for a wife. His letters had been eloquent, describing his successful ranch and the life they would build together. She had imagined a grand house with multiple rooms, perhaps a wraparound porch with white columns, something befitting a prosperous rancher. Instead, she found herself looking at a structure that could barely be called a house at all. The cabin was small, barely large enough for 2 rooms, with chinking missing between several logs and a roof that looked like it had seen better days. The driver hauled down her trunk, the only possession she had brought across the country. Everything else had been sold to afford the journey and the proper clothes she thought a rancher's wife would need. Her navy traveling dress was dusty from the road, and her dark hair had long since escaped its carefully pinned arrangement. At 22 years old, Olivia had never felt more foolish or more frightened. "This cannot be right," she said to the driver, her voice barely above a whisper. "You must have brought me to the wrong place." The driver, an older man with a tobacco-stained beard, shook his head. "This here is the Zimmerman property, miss. Only one in these parts by that name." Before Olivia could protest further, a man emerged from the barn adjacent to the cabin. He was tall and lean, with shoulders broadened by hard labor. His dark hair was longer than fashionable men wore it back east, and several days of stubble shadowed his jaw. He wore simple work clothes, dirt and dust covering his boots and the knees of his trousers. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a striking gray-blue that seemed to assess her in a single glance. "Miss Carson?" he asked, his voice deeper than she had expected, roughened perhaps by years of commanding ranch hands and cattle. "Mr. Zimmerman." She tried to keep the disappointment from her voice and failed entirely. He removed his hat, revealing the full measure of his face. He was handsome, she supposed, in a rugged way that was entirely foreign to her experience. The men in Boston society had been pale and soft, concerned more with their investments than with physical labor. This man looked like he could lift her trunk with one hand and not break a sweat. "I apologize for not being more presentable," Harrison said, approaching her with cautious steps, as if she were a spooked horse that might bolt at any moment. "I was repairing fence line and lost track of time. I did not expect the stage until tomorrow." "The schedule changed," Olivia said stiffly. She could feel tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. She had been raised better than that. Carson women did not weep in public, no matter how dire the circumstances. Harrison picked up her trunk easily, just as she had predicted, and carried it toward the cabin. "Please, come inside. You must be exhausted from your journey. It is a long way from Boston." Olivia followed him, her kid leather boots crunching on the dry earth. The territory was beautiful in its own stark way. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow even in summer. The sky stretched endless and blue, unmarred by the smoke and haze of city factories. The air smelled of pine and sage and something else she could not quite identify, something wild and clean. Inside, the cabin was even smaller than it appeared from outside. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting room all at once. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs stood in the center. Through an open doorway, she could see a bedroom barely large enough for the bed it contained. "I know it is not much," Harrison said quietly, setting her trunk down near the door. "Not what you expected, I am sure." Your letters spoke of a successful ranch, Olivia said, and now she could not keep the accusation from her tone. You sent a photograph, you described your property, I assumed. Everything I wrote was true, Harrison interrupted, his own voice taking on a defensive edge. I do have a successful ranch. 300 head of cattle, good grazing land, water rights to the creek that runs through the property. But success out here is not measured the same way it is in the East, Miss Carson. Out here, success means you survive. It means your cattle make it through the winter, and you have enough money to buy seed and supplies for the next year. It means you build slowly, carefully, so that what you create will last. Olivia sank into one of the chairs, no longer able to maintain her rigid composure. I sold everything, she whispered. My mother's jewelry, the furniture that had been in our family for generations. I used every cent to come here to start this new life. And this is what I find, a cabin that will barely shelter us from the weather. Harrison pulled out the other chair and sat across from her. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, marks left by squinting into the sun and wind. She could see, too, the calluses on his hands, the permanent stain of hard work on his fingers. These were not the hands of a gentleman farmer. These were the hands of a man who labored from dawn until dusk. I never lied to you, he said, and there was hurt in his voice now. I told you I was building something here. I told you it would be hard work. Maybe I should have been more specific about the house, but Miss Carson, I wrote those letters in good faith. I am looking for a partner, someone who wants to build a life with me, not someone who expects everything handed to her already finished. The words stung because they held truth. Olivia had read into his letters what she wanted to see. She had imagined herself stepping into a ready-made life, comfortable and secure. She had not truly considered what frontier life would mean. I am sorry, she said finally. You are right. I made assumptions, but Mr. Zimmerman, I must be honest with you. I do not know if I can do this. I do not know if I am strong enough for this kind of life. Something shifted in Harrison's expression, a softening around his eyes. What would you do if you left? Do you have family back east? Money for the return journey? Olivia shook her head. I have no one. My parents died 3 years ago. I was living with my aunt, but she made it clear I was a burden. That is why I answered your advertisement. I hoped, this would be a new beginning. Harrison reached across the table, his rough hand hovering near hers but not quite touching. Then stay, he said. Give it a chance. Give us a chance. I know the cabin is not impressive, but Miss Carson, we can build our dream together. That is what I am offering you. Not a finished product, but the opportunity to create something lasting with your own hands. Olivia looked at his hand, so close to hers, and then up at his face. His expression was earnest, hopeful in a way that made him look younger than his 28 years. She thought about the long journey back to Boston, about returning to her aunt's cold charity, about the other limited options available to an unmarried woman with no family and no money. I will need to learn everything, she said slowly. I can cook and sew and manage a household, but I know nothing about ranching, nothing about life out here. I will teach you, Harrison promised. And Miss Carson, I want you to know there is no pressure regarding our marriage. I know we are strangers. We can take our time, get to know each other. I built a small room onto the back of the cabin, meant for storage, but I can move my things there and you can have the bedroom. We will do this properly. The offer surprised her and strangely reassured her. She had been terrified of many things on the journey west, and one of them had been the marriage bed with a man she did not know. The fact that he offered her time and space spoke well of his character. Thank you, she said quietly. That is kind of you. Harrison stood and moved to the stove, adding wood to the firebox. You must be hungry. Let me make us some supper and then you should rest. Tomorrow I will show you around the ranch, let you see what we have here." Olivia watched as he moved efficiently around the small kitchen, pulling out salt pork and beans, setting a pot of coffee to boil. His movements were practiced, the actions of a man who had been caring for himself for a long time. She wondered about his story, what had brought him to Montana territory, why he had sought a wife through advertisement rather than courting someone local. As if sensing her thoughts, Harrison said, "I came here 5 years ago from Ohio. My father was a farmer, but the land was worn out and divided between too many sons. I wanted something of my own, something I built from nothing. Montana territory offered that opportunity. It has been hard work, lonely work. I realized last winter that I did not want to do this alone anymore. I wanted someone to share it with, to build toward a future with." "Are there many women in Helena?" Olivia asked. "Some," Harrison admitted. "But most are already spoken for, or they are the daughters of established families who would not look twice at a man still living in a cabin. I needed someone who understood what it meant to start from the beginning. Someone who would not judge me for what I do not have yet, but for what I am trying to build." The simple honesty of his words touched something in Olivia's chest. She realized that Harrison was as vulnerable in this arrangement as she was. He had risked rejection, risked bringing a woman all this way only to have her turn away in disgust. Yet here he was, making her supper, offering her grace and understanding. They ate in companionable silence, the food simple but well prepared. Through the open door, Olivia could see the sun beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that she had never witnessed in Boston. The beauty of it made her breath catch. "It is something, is it not?" Harrison said, following her gaze. "No matter how hard the day has been, the sunset always reminds me why I am here." After supper, Harrison showed her the bedroom and then excused himself to move his belongings to the storage room. Olivia unpacked a nightgown and her hairbrush, her hands shaking with exhaustion. The bed was simple but clean, the mattress stuffed with what smelled like fresh straw and sweet grass. When she finally lay down, she expected to lie awake for hours, her mind churning with worry and regret. Instead, she fell asleep almost immediately, lulled by the profound silence of the frontier night. She woke to the sound of roosters crowing and the smell of coffee brewing. For a disoriented moment, she could not remember where she was. Then it all came back to her: the cabin, the ranch, Harrison's promise that they would build their dream together. Olivia dressed quickly in a simple cotton day dress and emerged from the bedroom to find Harrison already up, breakfast cooking on the stove. "Good morning," he said, offering her a smile that transformed his serious face. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I expected," Olivia admitted. "What time is it?" "About 6. On a ranch we start early. The animals do not wait for us to be ready." Olivia poured herself coffee and sat at the table, watching as Harrison dished up eggs and biscuits. The eggs were fresh, the biscuits golden and flaky. "You are a good cook," she observed. "Necessary skill when you live alone," Harrison replied. "But I will admit, I am looking forward to sharing kitchen duties. There is something lonely about always cooking for one." After breakfast, Harrison led her outside to show her the property. The ranch was larger than she had realized, stretching out across rolling grassland dotted with cattle. The barn was well maintained, housing 3 horses and space for hay storage. There was a chicken coop with a dozen hens, a smokehouse, and a root cellar dug into the side of a small hill. "The creek runs along the eastern boundary," Harrison explained, pointing toward a line of cottonwood trees. "Water is the most valuable thing we have out here. I was fortunate to file claim on property with year-round water access." He introduced her to the horses, a mare named Daisy, a gelding named Buck, and a younger horse he was still training named Storm. Olivia had never been comfortable around horses, but Daisy proved gentle, nuzzling her hand when Harrison instructed her to offer the mare an apple. "You will need to learn to ride," Harrison said. "The ranch is too large to cover on foot, and there may be times when you need to get to town quickly." The thought terrified her, but Olivia nodded. "Will you teach me?" "Of course. We will start slowly. Daisy is a patient teacher." As they walked back toward the cabin, Harrison pointed out where he envisioned various improvements. "I want to build a proper house, 2 stories with a big kitchen and a sitting room, maybe 4 or 5 bedrooms for children, a wide porch where we can sit in the evenings, but that will take time and money. For now, we focus on what is essential. The cattle are doing well, and if we can get them through another winter and sell at a good price next spring, we will have capital to invest in improvements." "Why did you not build the house before seeking a wife?" Olivia asked. Harrison was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "Pride, maybe. Or stubbornness. I thought I could do it all myself. But last winter was brutal. I nearly lost half my herd to a late blizzard. It made me realize that some things are more important than others. I needed a partner more than I needed a bigger house. Someone to share the burden, to make the hard times bearable." "Does that make sense?" "It does," Olivia said softly, and surprisingly it did. She was beginning to understand the calculus of frontier life, where every decision had to be weighed carefully, where survival sometimes meant putting practical needs before comfort. Over the next few weeks, Olivia settled into the rhythms of ranch life. Harrison was patient with her, teaching her to gather eggs without spooking the chickens, to churn butter, to identify which plants in the garden were weeds and which were vegetables. He taught her to ride, first just sitting on Daisy while the mare stood still, then walking slowly around the corral, gradually building her confidence until she could trot without feeling like she would fall. The work was harder than anything Olivia had ever experienced. Her hands, once soft and pale, became rough and sunburned. Her muscles ached in places she had not known she had muscles. But there was something deeply satisfying about the work too. When she collected eggs, she knew those eggs would become their breakfast. When she weeded the garden, she could see the immediate results of her labor. Harrison worked from dawn until well past dusk, riding out to check on the cattle, repairing fence, cutting hay for winter storage. Often he came back to the cabin exhausted, barely able to eat before he collapsed into sleep. On those nights, Olivia felt a tender concern for him, this man who drove himself so hard to build a future for both of them. They talked in the evenings when Harrison had energy for conversation. She learned that he loved to read, that the small shelf of books in the cabin were his most prized possessions. She learned that he had a younger sister back in Ohio who wrote to him occasionally, and that his parents had died within a year of each other when he was 25. She learned that he had a dry sense of humor that emerged when he was relaxed, and that he sang sometimes when he worked, old folk songs that reminded him of home. Harrison learned about her too. She told him about growing up in Boston, about her father's import business that had failed after he fell ill, about her mother's decline after her father's death. She told him about the loneliness of living with her aunt, about feeling like a burden, about the desperate hope she had felt when she read his advertisement. "I am glad you answered," Harrison said one evening as they sat outside watching the stars emerge. "I know this has not been easy for you, but Miss Carson, you have exceeded every expectation I had. You work hard, you learn quickly, and you do not complain even when I know you must be exhausted." "Please," Olivia said, "call me Olivia. We have been living together for a month now." "Surely we can use first names," Harrison smiled, Olivia, it suits you, and you should call me Harrison or Harry if you prefer. My sister always called me Harry. Harrison, Olivia tested the name on her tongue. I like it, it sounds strong. He turned to look at her, and in the fading light, his eyes were dark and serious. Olivia, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Do you think you could be happy here? I know it is not what you expected, but do you think, given time, you could make a life with me? Olivia's heart began to beat faster. Over the past weeks, she had caught herself watching Harrison when he did not know she was looking. She had noticed the way his hands moved, sure and capable. She had noticed his kindness, the way he always made sure she had enough to eat even if it meant he went with less. She had noticed the sound of his voice, the way it rumbled pleasantly when he read aloud in the evenings. I think I could, she said carefully. I think I am happier here than I expected to be. The work is hard, but it has purpose. And Harrison, I find that I enjoy your company. I look forward to our evenings together. I enjoy your company too, Harrison said, and there was something in his voice that made her pulse quicken. More than I thought possible. Olivia, when I placed that advertisement, I was looking for a practical partner, someone to share the work. But over these past weeks, I have found myself hoping for more. I have found myself caring about you, wanting you to be happy. I care about you too, Olivia admitted, the words coming easier than she expected. I did not think I would. I thought this would be a marriage of convenience, nothing more. But Harrison, you have been kind and patient and respectful. You have made me feel valued. Harrison reached over and took her hand, his rough palm warm against hers. Then, perhaps, we could consider making this a real marriage, not rushing into anything but courting properly, with the understanding that we are both hoping for more than just a business arrangement. I would like that, Olivia said, her fingers curling around his. I would like that very much. From that evening forward, their relationship shifted subtly but definitively. Harrison began to find small ways to show his affection, picking wildflowers for the table, taking extra care to prepare foods he knew she liked. Olivia mended his clothes with careful stitches, made sure his coffee was always hot when he came in from morning chores, saved the largest biscuits for his plate. One Saturday, Harrison suggested they ride into Helena together. You have been here more than a month and have not seen the town yet. We need supplies anyway, and I thought you might enjoy getting to know the place. There is a general store, a church, a schoolhouse. It is not Boston, but it is a real community. The ride to Helena took about an hour, and Olivia found herself enjoying the journey. She had become much more comfortable on horseback, and Daisy was as patient and gentle as Harrison had promised. The town, when they reached it, was larger than she expected, with a main street lined with businesses and several side streets of houses. Harrison helped her down from her horse and tied both mounts to the rail outside the general store. Inside, the proprietor greeted Harrison warmly and looked at Olivia with open curiosity. Fred, this is Olivia Carson, my wife-to-be, Harrison said, and Olivia felt a flutter in her chest at the introduction. Fred's face broke into a wide smile. Well now, Harrison, you kept this quiet. Pleasure to meet you, Miss Carson. Welcome to Helena. As they shopped, other townspeople stopped to introduce themselves. There was Doc Miller, who ran the medical practice, and his wife Sarah, who taught at the schoolhouse. There was Pastor Reynolds from the church, who immediately invited them to Sunday services. There was Martha Green, who owned the dress shop, and her husband Tom, who managed the feed store. Everyone was friendly, genuinely welcoming. Several women invited Olivia to various social gatherings, a quilting circle, a ladies' aid society meeting. It was different from Boston society, more direct and less formal, but no less real in its warmth. They seemed nice. Olivia said to Harrison as they loaded their supplies onto a small wagon he had borrowed for the trip. "They are good people," Harrison agreed. "Life out here is hard enough without making enemies of your neighbors. People help each other. When someone is sick or injured, the community rallies. When there is a barn raising or a wedding, everyone comes together." As they prepared to leave town, a man approached them, well dressed in a way that marked him as wealthy even by Eastern standards. "Zimmerman," he said, his voice cool. "I see you finally convinced some poor woman to share that sorry excuse for a ranch." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Cyrus, I did not know you were back in town." "Just arrived yesterday," the man Cyrus replied. He turned to Olivia, his gaze assessing in a way that made her uncomfortable. "Cyrus Thornton, miss. My father owns the largest ranch in these parts. I have been back east finishing my education, but I have returned to help manage the family holdings." "Olivia Carson," she replied, her voice carefully neutral. "Carson," Cyrus repeated. "Are you from the Boston Carsons?" "My family lived in Boston, yes, though I doubt we moved in the same circles." Cyrus's smile did not reach his eyes. "Well, I hope you are prepared for what life with Zimmerman will entail. His little operation is barely profitable. My father has offered to buy him out several times, but he is too stubborn to accept a good deal when he sees one." "My ranch is not for sale," Harrison said flatly. "Now, if you will excuse us, we have a long ride home." As they drove away, Olivia could feel the tension radiating from Harrison. "Who was that?" she asked. "Trouble," Harrison muttered. "The Thorntons have been trying to buy my land for years. I have water rights they want, and they do not like that I refuse to sell. Cyrus is the worst of them, always has been, spoiled and mean in equal measure." "He seemed very interested in where I was from," Olivia observed. "He is probably trying to figure out if you have family with money, connections he can use or exploit," Harrison said. "Do not trust him, Olivia. Do not trust any of the Thorntons." The warning stuck with Olivia, casting a slight shadow over what had otherwise been a pleasant day. But by the time they reached the ranch, with the sun setting in its spectacular fashion, she had pushed Cyrus Thornton from her mind. The next weeks passed quickly, filled with work and the gradual deepening of her relationship with Harrison. They had fallen into an easy partnership, anticipating each other's needs, working side by side in comfortable silence or easy conversation. Harrison had begun teaching her more complex tasks, how to treat minor injuries in the cattle, how to read the weather signs, how to shoot the rifle in case of emergency. It was during one of these shooting lessons that Cyrus Thornton appeared again. Olivia was concentrating on her aim, trying to hit the target Harrison had set up near the tree line, when she heard the sound of approaching hooves. Harrison immediately stepped closer to her, his body language protective. Cyrus rode up with two other men, ranch hands by the look of them. "Zimmerman," he called out. "I was riding the boundary and thought I would stop by with a neighborly warning." "What kind of warning?" Harrison asked, his hand resting casually on his own sidearm. "Rustlers have been active in the area. Several ranches have lost cattle. My father thought smaller operations like yours should be on alert. It would be a shame if you lost what little herd you have managed to scrape together." "I appreciate the information," Harrison said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "We will keep watch." Cyrus's gaze drifted to Olivia. "How are you settling in, Miss Carson? Not too lonely out here with only Zimmerman for company?" "My mother often holds social gatherings at our ranch. I would be happy to extend an invitation. Let you see how proper people live in Montana territory." "I am quite content, thank you," Olivia replied coolly. "Harrison keeps me well occupied." Something flashed in Cyrus's eyes, anger perhaps, or wounded pride. Well, the offer stands should you change your mind. These small ranches often fail, you know. It would be wise to make connections with more successful families for your future security. My future is with Harrison, Olivia said firmly. Now, if you will excuse us, we were in the middle of something. After Cyrus and his men rode away, Harrison pulled Olivia into an embrace, surprising them both. Thank you, he said against her hair, for standing with me, for choosing this life, choosing me. Olivia wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid strength of him. There is nowhere else I would rather be, she said, and realized with a start that she meant it completely. Somewhere over the past 2 months, this rough land and this hard-working man had become home. That evening, as they prepared supper together, Harrison said, I think we should get married soon. Officially, I mean. I know we have been taking our time, getting to know each other, but Olivia, I do not want there to be any doubt about our commitment. And honestly, Cyrus's interest in you worries me. Once we are legally married, he cannot make trouble. Are you proposing to me? Olivia asked, a smile tugging at her lips. Harrison had the grace to look embarrassed. I suppose I am, though not very romantically. Let me try again. He took both her hands in his. Olivia Carson, you have brought light into my life. You have made this cabin feel like a home. You have worked beside me without complaint, learned skills you never imagined you would need, and faced every challenge with courage and grace. I admire you, I care for you, and I am falling in love with you. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife in truth? Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, but these were tears of joy. Yes, she said. Yes, Harrison, I will marry you, and I need to tell you something too. I am not just falling in love with you, I think I am already there, completely and totally in love with you. Harrison's face lit up with a joy so pure it took her breath away. He pulled her close and kissed her, gentle at first, then with growing passion. It was Olivia's first real kiss, and it was everything she had ever dreamed a kiss could be. They were married the following Sunday at the small church in Helena, with half the town in attendance. Olivia wore a simple white dress that Martha Green had helped her alter from one of the gowns she had brought from Boston. Harrison wore his best suit, his hair neatly trimmed, his jaw freshly shaved. Pastor Reynolds performed the ceremony, his words about love and commitment and partnership resonating deeply with both bride and groom. At the reception held in the church hall, the community showered them with gifts and well wishes. Doc Miller and his wife gave them a set of dishes. Martha brought a beautiful quilt. Fred from the general store presented them with a fancy oil lamp. Others brought preserves, smoked meats, candles, small luxuries that would make their life a bit easier. Cyrus Thornton was noticeably absent, though several people mentioned that his family had been invited. Harrison seemed relieved, and Olivia was glad not to have the shadow of his presence on their special day. That night, alone in their cabin for the first time as husband and wife, Harrison carried Olivia over the threshold. "Welcome home, Mrs. Zimmerman," he said, and the name sent a thrill through her. "I like the sound of that," she replied, her arms around his neck. He set her down gently in the bedroom, and for a moment they simply looked at each other, suddenly shy. "We do not have to," Harrison began, but Olivia silenced him with a kiss. "I want to," she said. "I want this, I want you. I love you, Harrison." "I love you too," he replied, and then there were no more words, only the gentle exploration of two people learning to be one. The weeks that followed were blissful. Olivia had never imagined she could be so happy. Every morning she woke next to her husband, his solid warmth beside her. They worked together during the day, and every task seemed easier shared. In the evenings, they would sit together, talking or reading, sometimes simply enjoying the silence and each other's presence. but their peace was not to last undisturbed. About a month after the wedding, Harrison rode in from checking the herd with a grim expression. "We are missing cattle," he told Olivia. "At least 20 head that I can account for, maybe more. The rustlers Cyrus warned about seem to have hit us." Olivia felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "What will you do?" "I need to report it to the sheriff, see if other ranches have been hit too. Will you be all right here alone? I need to ride into town." "I will be fine," Olivia assured him, though the thought of being alone made her nervous. "Take Buck, he is faster, and Harrison, be careful." Harrison returned late that evening with the sheriff, a weathered man named Bill Thompson who had been enforcing law in Helena for 10 years. Over coffee, he explained the situation. "You are the third ranch to report losses this month, all smaller operations, interestingly enough. The big spreads have not been touched." "You think it is an inside job?" Harrison asked. "I think it is convenient," Sheriff Thompson said carefully, "but I cannot make accusations without proof. I will increase patrols in the area, but Harrison, you need to be vigilant. Keep watch on your herd, vary your routine so you are not predictable." After the sheriff left, Harrison held Olivia close. "I am worried," he admitted. "Those cattle represent a significant portion of our wealth. If we lose more, we might not make it through the winter." "Then we will be vigilant," Olivia said firmly. "We will not let whoever is doing this destroy what we have built." Harrison began riding out at different times, checking the herd more frequently. Olivia learned to handle the rifle with more confidence, keeping it close when she was alone. The joy of their early marriage was overshadowed by constant worry. Then one night, about 2 weeks after the initial theft, Harrison woke Olivia in the darkness. "I heard something," he whispered. "Stay here and keep the rifle ready." But Olivia was not about to let him face danger alone. She dressed quickly and followed him outside, ignoring his protests. In the distance, toward the area where they kept the cattle at night, they could see the flicker of torches. Harrison mounted Buck bareback, and Olivia climbed up behind him. They rode toward the light, and as they got closer, they could make out figures on horseback, driving a group of cattle toward the boundary of the property. "Hey!" Harrison shouted. "Stop right there!" The rustlers turned, and in the torchlight, Olivia saw faces she recognized. Cyrus Thornton's ranch hands, the same men who had accompanied him on his visit weeks ago. One of the men drew a gun, and Harrison immediately wheeled Buck around, shielding Olivia with his body. A shot rang out, the bullet whistling past them into the darkness. Harrison urged Buck into a gallop, racing back toward the cabin. "We need to get to town, get the sheriff," Harrison said urgently. "This is too dangerous for us to handle alone." But before they could reach the cabin, more riders appeared, cutting off their escape. Harrison pulled Buck to a stop, trapped. Cyrus Thornton rode forward, his face twisted with anger in the torchlight. "You have been a thorn in my side long enough, Zimmerman. My father wants your land, and he will have it. Once you are dead, your widow will have no choice but to sell." "You are going to murder us over land," Olivia demanded, her voice shaking with fury more than fear. "You would hang for that." "Who says anyone will know?" Cyrus replied. "Terrible thing, rustlers killing honest ranchers. Happens all the time out here." But before Cyrus could give the order to his men, new riders appeared, coming fast from the direction of town. Sheriff Thompson and a group of deputies surrounded them, guns drawn. "Nobody move," the sheriff shouted. "Cyrus Thornton, you and your men are under arrest for cattle rustling and attempted murder." Cyrus's face went pale. "You have no proof." "I have all the proof I need," Sheriff Thompson said. "I have been watching your operation for weeks, waiting for you to make a move. I suspected it was you, given the pattern of thefts. Only small ranches were hit, ranches your father wanted to buy. Tonight you confirmed it. As the deputies rounded up Cyrus and his men, Sheriff Thompson approached Harrison and Olivia. "I apologize for using you as bait," he said. "But I needed to catch them in the act. Are you both all right?" "We are fine," Harrison said, his arm tight around Olivia. "Thank you, Bill, I owe you." "You do not owe me anything," the sheriff replied. "Just doing my job." The next morning, the full story spread through Helena. Cyrus Thornton had been stealing cattle from small ranches, trying to drive them out of business so his father could buy their land cheaply. Old Mr. Thornton claimed ignorance of his son's actions, but the scandal tainted the family name. Cyrus was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and several of his accomplices received similar sentences. The stolen cattle were returned to their rightful owners, including Harrison's herd. But more than that, the attempted murder had galvanized the community. Ranchers who had been struggling alone realized the value of standing together. They formed a cooperative, agreeing to help each other during difficult times, to share resources and information. With the threat of the Thorntons removed and the support of the community behind them, Harrison and Olivia's ranch began to truly thrive. That fall, they were able to sell their cattle at an excellent price. Harrison immediately invested in materials to expand the cabin. Over the winter, with the help of neighbors who came for a barn-raising style construction, they added 3 new rooms to the cabin, making it a proper house. It was not the mansion Olivia had once imagined, but it was solid and warm and built with love and community support. Spring brought new calves and new hope. Olivia discovered she was pregnant, the news filling them both with joy. Harrison immediately became more protective, insisting she rest more, take on lighter tasks. "I am with child, not ill," Olivia protested, but she was touched by his concern. "I know," Harrison said, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "But you are carrying our child, our future. I want to take care of you both." Their son was born in December during a gentle snowfall. Doc Miller attended the birth and Martha Green came to help. The labor was long and difficult, but when Olivia finally held her baby boy in her arms, she felt a love so fierce and overwhelming it brought tears to her eyes. "What should we name him?" Harrison asked, his own eyes suspiciously bright as he looked at his son. "I was thinking Thomas after my father," Olivia said. "Thomas Harrison Zimmerman." "That is perfect," Harrison agreed, carefully taking the baby from her. "Hello, Thomas, welcome to your life." Watching her husband hold their son, Olivia thought back to that first day when she had arrived at the cabin, devastated by disappointment. She had expected a mansion but found only a small, rough cabin. She had expected an easy life but found hard work and constant challenges. But she had also found something she had not even known to expect: true love, real partnership, and a sense of home deeper than any building could provide. Over the next several years, their family grew. Thomas was joined by a daughter, Emily, and then another son, James. The house expanded with the family, Harrison adding rooms as they needed them. It would never be a mansion, but it became a home filled with laughter and love. The ranch continued to prosper. With careful management and the support of their community, they built something lasting and valuable. Harrison became known as a respected rancher, his opinion sought on matters of livestock and land management. Olivia became involved in the community, helping to organize social events, teaching at the Sunday school, always ready to lend a hand to a neighbor in need. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Harrison surprised Olivia with a gift. "Come outside," he said, taking her hand. In front of the house, he had erected a beautiful wooden sign, expertly carved and painted. It read Zimmerman Ranch, St. 1878, built on dreams and love. "I wanted to commemorate where we started," Harrison explained, To remember that first day when I told you we would build our dream together. We did it, Olivia. We really did it." Olivia threw her arms around his neck, kissing him soundly. "We did," she agreed. "And Harrison, I would not change a single thing. Not the cabin, not the hard work, not the struggles. It all brought us here to this moment, to this life we have built together." That evening, after the children were in bed, they sat on the porch that now wrapped around two sides of the house. The mountains loomed in the distance, purple shadows against the darkening sky. The air smelled of sage and pine and the sweet grass of summer. "You ever miss Boston?" Harrison asked, his arm around her shoulders. Olivia considered the question. "Sometimes I miss certain things. The libraries, the theater, but I do not miss the life I had there. Here I have purpose. I have you, our children, our community. I have a home in the truest sense of the word. This is where I belong." "I am glad," Harrison said softly, "because I cannot imagine my life without you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Zimmerman." "And you are mine," she replied, snuggling closer to his warmth. The years continued to pass in the rhythms of ranch life. Seasons turned, children grew, the land prospered. There were hard times, certainly. Harsh winters, dry summers, the occasional illness or injury. But through it all, Harrison and Olivia faced each challenge together, their love growing deeper and stronger with each shared trial. Thomas grew into a serious boy who loved the ranch as much as his father did. He could ride before he could properly walk, and he shadowed Harrison constantly, learning everything he could about ranching. Emily was quieter, more bookish, but she had a gift with animals and could gentle the most skittish horse. James, the youngest, had his mother's quick wit and his father's stubborn determination. When Thomas turned 18, Harrison gave him a section of land to manage himself, a chance to prove his abilities and begin building his own future. Emily married a young teacher who came to Helena from Denver, a kind man who respected her intelligence and encouraged her love of learning. James announced his intention to study law, to become an advocate for small ranchers and farmers against the larger interests that sometimes threatened them. Harrison and Olivia found themselves alone in the house again. The children launched into their own lives. But the quietness was not lonely. They had each other, they had the ranch, they had the life they had built together. On the evening of their 25th anniversary, they rode out together to the place where Harrison had first shown Olivia the extent of their land. They dismounted and stood looking over the valley, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Do you remember what I said to you that first day?" Harrison asked. "When you saw the cabin and I could tell you were heartbroken, you said we would build our dream together," Olivia replied. "And we did, Harrison. We really did." "I fell in love with you so quickly," Harrison admitted. "Before I even wanted to admit it to myself. When I watched you getting off that stage, trying so hard to hide your disappointment, trying to be brave, my heart just knew. You were the one I had been waiting for." "I took a bit longer," Olivia said with a laugh. "I was too busy being horrified by the cabin. But I think I started falling in love with you that first evening when you made me supper and offered me grace instead of anger. You were so kind, so understanding. You gave me time and space to adjust, to learn, to find my way." "I would do it all again," Harrison said. "Every single moment, the struggles, the fears, the hard work, because it brought us here to this life, this love." Olivia turned to face her husband, this man who had kept every promise he had ever made to her. His hair was gray at the temples now, and lines marked his face, but his eyes still held the same warmth, the same steadiness that had first drawn her to him. "I love you, Harrison Zimmerman," she said. "More today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." "I love you too, Olivia Zimmerman," he replied, pulling her into his arms. My partner, my love, my home. They stood together as the sun sank below the horizon, two people who had started with nothing but hope and determination and built a life beyond anything either of them could have imagined. The mansion Olivia had expected would have been just a building, empty and cold. What they had created instead was a true home, filled with love and family and the satisfaction of work done together. The ranch would continue for generations, passed down to their children and their children's children. But it was more than just land and cattle. It was a legacy of love, of partnership, of two people who had met as strangers and chosen to build their dream together. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Harrison and Olivia mounted their horses and rode back toward home. The house waited for them, lights glowing warmly in the windows, a beacon in the vast Montana landscape. It was not a mansion, but it was everything they needed. It was built on the solid foundation of their love, and that made it worth more than any mansion ever could be. Inside, they stoked the fire and prepared for bed, their movements synchronized by decades of partnership. As Olivia settled into Harrison's arms, she thought about the girl who had arrived in Montana territory all those years ago, expecting one life and finding something completely different. That girl had been disappointed by a cabin, not understanding that true wealth had nothing to do with the size of a house. But the woman Olivia had become understood that wealth was measured in love shared, in challenges overcome together, in children raised and dreams achieved. The rancher had promised they would build their dream together, and he had kept that promise in every way that mattered. "What are you thinking about?" Harrison murmured, his voice drowsy. "About dreams," Olivia replied. "About how sometimes the dreams we do not even know we have turned out to be better than the ones we thought we wanted." "I like that," Harrison said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Sweet dreams, my love." "Sweet dreams," Olivia echoed, and as she drifted off to sleep in the arms of the man she loved, surrounded by the life they had built together, she knew that she was living her sweetest dream of all. The years ahead would bring more changes, more challenges, more joys. Grandchildren would play in the yard where their parents had played. The ranch would evolve with new technologies and methods. But through it all, the heart of it would remain the same. Two people who had chosen to build their dream together, who had taken a small cabin and transformed it into a home, who had proven that love and partnership could overcome any obstacle. And on quiet evenings, when Harrison and Olivia sat on their porch watching the Montana sunset, they would sometimes talk about that first day when she had expected a mansion but found a cabin. They would laugh at how far they had come, how much they had built together. And they would hold hands, grateful for every moment of the life they had created, because in the end it was never about the mansion. It was about finding someone to dream with, someone to build with, someone to love through all the seasons of life. That was the real treasure, the real success. And that was something no amount of money could ever buy. The cabin had become a house, the house had become a home, and the home had become a legacy. But most importantly, two strangers had become partners, partners had become lovers, and lovers had become soulmates. In the wild west of Montana territory, against the backdrop of mountains and endless sky, Harrison and Olivia Zimmerman had built something that would last forever. A love story for the ages, a testament to the power of commitment and partnership, proof that the best dreams are the ones you build together.